Preston and Brentford, who I like both, traditionally kind of small. I always link them together because they kind of seem to do the same thing a slightly different way. You've got Brentford going to the European market, sign, sell, and the value seems to go up every time. Preston seem to do it from the lower leagues. It looks like I know Brentford finally get to their new stadium at the end of the season, don't they? It looks like the flaw in this model, like you see at Brentford, is too many out and too many in. But um, the sense I get with Preston and Brentford, Kieran, is that by the time they're negotiating to sell, the replacement's already at the club and he's been there for 3 months or what have you. So I really like these two. What do you think?
Yeah, Brentford are fascinating. The fact that they've done away with their academy and they've replaced it with trying to recruit effectively players not wanted by other clubs in London. And I think this is where they're in the perfect position to take advantage of London being a big city. It's got half a dozen clubs in the Premier League already. You've got academies where you're going to have players coming out who are disillusioned. It then comes down to the quality of their talent identification. Matthew Benham, who's in charge, as you know, he runs one of the big betting companies himself. They do a lot of research into players. So there can be a bit of research done from the betting arm. Say, well, these players. If you look at their metrics, and he's very much into big data, and I think we are moving into an era of football. It's not going to be quite Moneyball, but where clubs will be identifying strengths of players from the data analytics team as much as from the scouts. And I think Brentford have very much bought into that belief when they moved to the new version of Griffin Park, and that is coming on quite well because that's quite close to the Sky Studios in
Yeah, you can
London.
see it from the flyover, can't you? As
Yeah,
you drive
yeah,
in there, yeah.
and it's a shame because Brentford is one of my favourite grounds. I
Great, isn't it?
absolutely love, which is unusual because they inevitably used to absolutely thrash us 3 or 4-0 when we used to go there with Brighton. But hey, with having 4 pubs at the corner of each pylon, we didn't particularly care by half time. We were gone. Um, so yeah, I think they're strong. But even so, I say people would think Brentford a well-run club. They were losing 350 grand a week in terms of running themselves as a football club, and they've always relied on player sales to dig themselves out of that, and they've been successful. But you only need 2 seasons when you can't unearth any diamonds, and all of a sudden you're in a problem. When it comes to Preston, Trevor Hemmings, the guy that owns Preston North End, he seems to get quite a lot of criticism from a section of the fan base. And they're perfectly entitled to say what they want. He's putting £100,000 a week into the club. He's lending that club £5 to £6 million each season, and the attitude of some of the fans appears to be, well, you're not subsidising the club enough. And I think that if I was putting £100,000 into anything in my life, and let's face it, I don't earn that in a few years. Then I'd wonder why on earth am I doing it if I'm getting a load of stick? And I think there's a parallel there to a certain extent with Marcus Evans at Ipswich. And I read the forums before I normally do an analysis, and just to try to sort of pick up a feel for what's happening in a club. And he's another one of those owners who every year he's putting a large sum of money into the club, and then the fans turn around enough and say, well, you're going to £6 million, you're going to £10 million enough this year. That's not enough. That's a lot of money. And I do think that we as fans have lost touch with value and actually the extent to which owners are subsidising the clubs. And that's what they're doing. They're subsidising our entertainment. If Preston North End lived within their means, they'd be in League One. So you might not like what the fans perceive as a lack of ambition, and you will see the constant speculate to accumulate, and that doesn't work. If I say to my wife this at the end of this month, look, I'm going to take my pay packet. I'm not going to pay the mortgage. I'm not going to pay the council tax bill. I'm not going to pay the lecky bill. Tell you what, I'm going to spend it all on scratch cards because we might win 50 grand. Well, she's going to bat me around the head, and rightly so. So why do football fans, who they wouldn't do that with their own finances, why do they assume? Why do they turn around to the likes of Trevor Hemming and say, well, if you start £20 million into the club this season, that might work. And I've got two words to say to that: Tony G.
Yeah.
Think about what happened at Aston Villa. He put a lot of money into that club over 2 seasons, and Aston Villa were within 1 hour of going out of business.